Okay, we are back. This is Norm Jones, Brigham Young University, and we are doing um, steps 6 and 7 of the Comments Exploring Objects exercise. And hopefully at this point in time you've watched the part 1 where we did steps 1 through 5. And this is part 2. We're going to do the next 2 steps. And we're going to do things a little differently, but before we get to steps 6 and 7, I want to mention something. The code that we've written so far is not what I would call robust, meaning that if you're not careful, it will crash Excel. For example, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click the Delete Comments button, and as you recall, we wrote code in the first part of this exercise that deleted the comments from cells, from the X, Y, and Z cells. Now, if I click that button again, watch what happens. Runtime error 91, object variable or with block variable not set. So if I hit debug, it goes in here and basically it crashes on this line of code. Why does it crash? Because we are attempting to delete an object that does not exist. It doesn't exist because we've already deleted it. And so if you're not careful, if you click on that button when there is not a comment associated with the X cell or the Y cell or the Z cell, it's going to crash every time. So I'm going to show you a way to fix that, and so let's exit that pause mode. And I'm going to leave this code up here. I'm just going to comment it. And remember, in one of our earlier exercises, we learned that if you begin a line with a single quote, it makes it a comment. So you can actually leave your code there, but make it so it does not have any impact when you run the code by turning it into a comment line by putting a single quote in front of it. And that's what I did. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a little trick that allows you to iterate through a collection of objects that will work whether there's 3 objects, 5 objects, 500 objects, or 0 objects, and it does not crash. And we're going to do that using what's called a for each loop. Now, we haven't talked about loops yet in our sequence of videos if you're doing these in order. There's going to be another set of videos associated with loops, and there's a chapter in the Excel VBA primer about loops. We're just going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at that. So the way you use a for each loop is used to iterate through each of the objects in a collection, and you start out by declaring a looping variable, which I'm going to call myCom, and that's going to be a comment object, and then I'm going to type for each myCom in comments. Now, when I say comments, what I'm referring to is the comments collection associated with the sheet. Well, why didn't I type sheets 1.comments? Well, I could. And this is a kind of a general rule in VBA and Excel. If you're writing code associated with a particular sheet, in this case, if you look up at the top, it says comments sheet 1. So I'm basically writing code that is explicitly associated with sheet 1. In that case, if you leave off the sheet identifier, it assumes that you are working on the current sheet. And if you want to refer to a different sheet, sheets 2 for example, or sheets 3, then you absolutely have to put that in, but in this case you don't. And by the way, this same principle applies to the range object. So for example, I could go in here and I could say, when I reference a range, technically I should reference the sheet as well, and then dot range. But again, if I'm going to just undo that. But if I'm working, if I know for a fact this code is associated with sheet 1, I can cheat. I can do a shortcut and just go directly to the object, which is part of the sheets, part of a sheet type object. And so this is just another one of the cases where Visual Basic is very accommodating. I like to say it lets you get away with murder. It's what makes it a really good first-time programming language. So I'm going to leave this as sheets1.comments, and then I'm going to say mycom.delete, and then next mycom. So the way this works is this is basically a loop, and what the first line says for each com in sheets1.comments. So essentially it's going to iterate through each of the comment objects in the sheets1.comments collection. And so everywhere in the loop, when I say in the loop, I mean whatever code we put between the for each statement and the next mycom statement. And in this case I have one line of code, but I could theoretically have 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 100 lines of code here. And in that code, when I refer to mycom, it is an alias for the current object in the collection. So the first time it iterates through here, it references the first object, and the next time it does the next object. And so basically it's going to keep repeating the middle part of this loop until it runs out of comments, at which point it goes down to the bottom line here, which ends the sub. And so again, what this should do is if I have 3 comments in my comments collection, it will delete each of those in turn. If I have 2, it'll delete the 2. If I have 10, it'll delete the 10. And if I have 0, it just skips the loop entirely and should work beautifully. And unlike our earlier code, this should be way more robust. And so I'm going to do insert comments, delete comments. It worked just fine. I'll do insert comments, and I'm just going to go over and create a couple more dummy comments over here just to show that it's going to delete all of those. So now I've got a couple of comments here. When I do delete comments, they're gone. So it does as many comments as I have. And the beautiful thing is, when I'm out of comments and I click on delete comments, nothing bad happens. There's no crash. And so that works great. So now let's go to step 6, add code for the show comments button to display all of the comments. So what we want this to do is when we have comments, we want this to mimic this little toggle right here, that it displays all of the comments, no matter how many you have. And again, we want this to be robust, so we're gonna use our for each loop again. So I'm going to go into design mode, and then I'm going to double click on the show comments button, and then I am going to, let's see, I'm going to clean this up. We don't need this code anymore. We have this fancy way of doing things. I am going to highlight and copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to go down here and do paste. And now instead of mycom.delete, I'm going to do mycom. Now, by the way, when you are typing the name of an object and then you click on the period, it will list all of the available members of that object, the properties and the methods. And I'm going to go down here, and what we want to do visible, I'm going to double click on that, and that is a Boolean, so it's either true or false. So I'm going to change that to true. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to copy that code to the clipboard. And then I'm going to go back to Excel, and we're going to do, the next step is to add code to the hide comments button to hide all the comments. So that I'm going to double click here, and then I'm going to paste, and then I'm just going to change this true to false. And so the show button will make all of the comments visible. The hide button will make all of them invisible. And again, since we're using the for each loop, this will work whether I have 0, 2, 3, however many. So go back here, exit design mode, save our changes, and show comments. hide comments, show comments, hide comments. If they're gone, and nothing happens, I mean, it's not applicable, but it doesn't crash. Insert, show, hide. So now this is getting a lot more functional. We've completed steps 1 through 7, and that will conclude this portion. We'll come back with the other video to do steps 8 and 9.